Yes. See, so much time. So, last time we were talking, we left off, we're talking about a lot of really positive topics like failed relationships and just the depth of loneliness and how it affects us. So I thought maybe to switch gears for you, we would kind of talk about the last couple of years of your life. Um, and some of the transitions that you've kind of seen yourself go through. Because just from the outside, for me, and I've said this to you before, and we all kind of talk about it, when you're not around, but how much you've changed over the last couple of years that we've known you, and it's pretty significant the change that we've seen. But we talk about it so much. I really want to hear from you as far as what you see when you look at yourself 2 years ago, and then you look at yourself today. So, in your own words, could you kind of explain kind of where you were when you first came here, what your to this school, what your mindset was, and what you're thinking, feeling, all that kind of stuff.
So I feel like the qualities in someone, even when they go through transitions, it always remains in them, but it's always two different, amplifications. That makes sense. So, like, for example, when I came here, I was obviously going through a lot of serious, like, depression stuff and, loneliness, sadness. And it's like, I still have that today, but it's like, decreased from where it was now, so it's not noticeable. And, like, where I try to help people a lot more now, it's like, I was still helping people back then, but it wasn't as much.
That is a very interesting point because I'm in agreement with you. And, as far away as you get from something, there's still some remnants of it there. Do you feel like that's something that you've always believed and thought and now you know to be true because you said that you've experienced it? Or is that something that you found out to be true?
I feel I always, like, felt as though it's been real. I mean, not, like, since the beginning of my life, but at least probably since being in middle school. So I've been thinking for, like, a few years. I don't know, mostly because I see, like, how people, it's like, even when they could, let's say, get away from something, they end up going back to it, like a drug habit, or let's say, maybe they end up just doing, like, the same mistakes they did before,
Mm-hmm.
maybe not as much. And it's like, it doesn't, like, leave their system completely, but it
Right.
just, the body kind of shifts it where it's like, okay, well, let's put all this effort here, and
Right.
here will be a, less thought item.
Do you feel like having that knowledge that that's still there, like how does that affect you today? So 2 years ago that was there, and like you said, it's not as prevalent or amplified was the word that you used, but knowing that that's still there today, how does that affect everyday life for you now as opposed to like 2 years ago?
It affects me now in a way. Well, I mean, it's not taking over my life. And the thing is, though, I still do have those moments. So for me, it's like, I think the worst part is just the fact that it's unpredictable. So I could just be sitting at home perfectly fine, and then that's when, like, the feelings start to kind of, like, ramp up a little bit. And it's like, I had nothing leading up to this, so
Right.
it kind of sucks.
So was it unpredictable back then as well?
It was unpredictable back then, but it was like the level was so high that you couldn't really notice a change, if that made sense.
Okay, right. Yeah, the difference between like 85 and 80 was not as...
Yeah, it's
Right.
like, so the changes happen a lot, but it's like, I'm not really noticing.
Okay. So as you were here a couple of years ago, and all the feelings that you kind of carried with you, where did that begin to... Well, here's an even better question. Like, did you want that to change? Like, were you aware of how you felt, and did you feel like, was that something that you put a lot of energy in, or was that something that you wanted to change but maybe didn't know how?
That was something I wanted to change, but at the time I was thinking, like, it wasn't going to be possible changes, so it just kind of, it's probably just gonna stay, and I should probably embrace it.
Scary.
Yeah, it's a very sad thought.
To think about, well, just, I mean, to even think about, what could have transpired if you just fully embrace it, and for anybody to have like a disheartening feeling of, what, let's just say it was like, okay, nobody loves me, and you're fighting that feeling, and you're like, okay, well, maybe somebody does, or I'm not sure. And then when that day comes where you just kind of go, you know what, this is absolute truth now. I'm done trying to believe that people might or whatever. This is how it is. Like, it's scary. Do you feel like you never got to that point where you fully embraced it?
There are a few aspects I fully embraced, and some of the beliefs I still carry, although they have a little bit more different viewpoints than they were.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the viewpoints, though, I like never fully embraced, and just kind of gone.
So, talk to me about when, and I don't even know if you remember when, but when did this transition kind of start? As far as you kind of shifting yourself a little bit, or creating some distance between you and those unhealthy mindsets or those unhealthy feelings that you might have had. Did you remember when that kind of started to change?
I remember a few points, but the problem is though, at least for me, it's been a very up down road. So it's I remember the first time everything started lining up, and then I remember when it started going downhill again, and then go up and down. It just, it just goes up and down a lot. So it's multiple parts.
Well, was there something that happened, or something that was done or said or experience that you had that in a positive light that maybe kind of offset some of the negative thoughts or feelings that you had? Do you remember a moment or something that happened where you were like, oh, maybe it's not as whatever as I thought it was? And what was that moment?
What moment made me said as? Well, this is hard for me to think because I'm trying to think of a specific point I could push out. I always remembered a lot of times I thought I'd be permanently alone, and more in recent years, probably around maybe let's say middle of last year, I realized that's not necessarily true, because even though I have a lot of people who end up abandoning me, I just have someone come in and take the place. So it's I'll never truly be alone. If I lose a friend, I'll get another friend and another one. And
you didn't believe that before?
No.
What was your belief before that?
My belief before is that once I was very lucky to get the group of people that I had at the time, and once I lost them, I was probably just gonna completely be alone.
Right. And let me point this out to you, because this is pretty awesome, and I've actually to people that have asked without divulging too much information, but how come Steven doesn't hang out with that other person anymore? The girl that you're hanging out with frequently and you're really good friends with here. But they're gonna know who she is. I don't know why I'm just not saying it.
And besides, and anyone from here that if they ever watch, is just gonna be like, oh yeah, which girl?
Right,
girl.
Right. There's so many of them, Steven. You're so popular. Is my face in this still? Anyways, kind of. But you, like you said, you would have friends come in, and you would really cling on to those friends, and those would be your friends, and maybe you kind of dealt with that fear of losing them and what that would look like or whatever, and that kind of equating to loneliness. But with this particular person, you actually spearheaded the distance that was created between you and this individual, because you deemed that relationship as not healthy for you. Is that right?
Yeah, that was the only relationship that I can remember where I specifically said this wasn't going to work.
Right, but this was not just some little friend of yours that you hung out with a little bit here and there, whatever. That friendship was a pretty significant part of your life, from my understanding, right? I mean, their family took you in, you had a room at their house. Like, it was pretty significant. So it's a pretty powerful thing for you to look at that relationship and understand where the unhealthiness lied, and knowing that that would even possibly push you closer to being lonely again, so to speak. You were willing to sacrifice a potential loneliness for your own healthiness. And that's, I don't know if you've ever, I mean, have you thought about that aspect of that's essentially what you did? Like, you didn't let the fear of being alone hinder you from making a healthy decision for yourself. And that's pretty freaking awesome, because you understand how many people, and we could look around and see how many people don't make that decision because they don't want to be alone, or stay in unhealthy relationships because they don't want to be alone. And it happens all the time.
Yeah, I thought about that from time to time. And, it does suck being alone, here and there. But then I always think, like, if I were to go back to that person, I'm just going to be in the same position where I'm going to say, damn, I wish I was alone.
Right. Like, did you actually think that, like, when you're hanging out with that person?
For a little bit, yeah. I was thinking, like, this is getting unenjoyable and I'd rather just be alone.
Like, when you made the decision to not hang out with them anymore, did you understand how... I mean, sometimes you maybe don't think that deep because you're just like, I just want to get rid of this thing that sucks as quickly as possible. But did you understand how healthy of a decision that is, and actually how oppositional that was to the way that you would previously have felt in regards to being alone? Like, did you get that you were making that mature of a decision?
Yeah, I understand the decision I was making was, it was going to be a hard one, but it was going to be a, more mature one, more healthier one, just staying.
Like, have you used that example? Have you ever thought about using that example to, like, encourage other people, just because, like, do you look around, do you see other people struggling with that same thing, in your opinion? Maybe having unhealthy friendships with people just because they don't want to be alone, or...
Me personally, the only like kind of examples I could think of that is when someone's like in a gang, but that's different. No, but I always I try to let people know though, like, if you are unhappy in a relationship, mm-hmm. there's a reason you're unhappy, and if you can't get to the cause, it's more likely best to just leave.
That's a really good point. And do you think that, I mean, if you're willing to, like, use yourself as an example for that, I mean, that's a pretty powerful statement. That, I mean, if you can't understand or get to the cause of why you're unhappy in a relationship, like, it's better to leave. And if you take that statement and you line that up with existing dating couples now, whether they're, in their teens or whether they're adults or whatever, if you look at that, like, there's probably a lot of people who are in unhealthy relationships. And I would even say it may not so much be if you can't get to the cause, but if you're not honest enough with yourself to embrace what the cause is, or even how you might play a part in that. So over the last year, how much looking at who you are now, right, and then looking at who you were 2 years ago, and I think it's very mature that you see the similarities there. It's a very healthy thing to keep your feet on the ground and recognize where you came from and that there's still connections. But talk about some of the positive things that have changed with you over the course of those 2 years, and kind of where you're at now, as opposed to, like, where you were before.
So one of probably the most positive thing I can think of is back then I had a very bad life, so I used to always think like everything that happened was for a bad cause and everything was directly, supposed to be bad for me. But over the years I started to look at like more reasons, I became more understanding over time.
Explain that. That's interesting. Explain the whole, like, bad things happen to you and bad cause. Like, are you saying that, like, life was just, like, kind of throwing stuff at you? Are you saying it was bad because of what was happening, or bad because of your perception of what was happening? Like, you had a bad outlook on things, or
I feel like it was like I had like a bad outlook, like everything I thought was going to be awful. And to be fair, a lot of bad stuff still does happen to me, but I'm able to see differently now, and I'm able to like tell when someone's doing something because they don't know any better and they think it's right, versus someone who just likes seeing others suffer.
So then, okay, so this is interesting. So would you say that, because you, in your honesty, saying that, negative things still happen, unhealthy things still happen to you, you're still exposed to those things, but would you say that the things that were happening to you like 2 years ago have changed dramatically and negative things don't really happen to you as much anymore? Or would you say more that your perception has changed about what happens to you?
I feel as though it's a mixture of both.
Uh-huh.
Like some stuff, I've just like changed perception. I'm like, okay, this isn't as bad as I thought, and then other stuff just hasn't really happened as much.
What do you equate to that change in perception? Like, does that just come with age, or do you feel like you've worked really hard to have a different outlook on things when they're thrown at you?
I feel like you have to work hard to have a different perspective, because there could be people who are 90 years old and they still had the same feelings and thoughts they did when they were 10 years old. Like you have to really get experience, and then you have to make the decision and try to put an effort. Like, if this is what I really believe, then I just need to like start actually believing it.
Do you think that you were just destined to gain this new perspective on things as you got older, or do you think that what do you equate to that perspective change? Like, did that just come with maturity, or is that just a tool that you didn't implement before but you do implement now? Like, do you feel like it was always there, or do you feel like you needed to go through some things or be encouraged or whatever to get to that point?
I feel like I definitely need to be encouraged, because because my family, like, they're like a very, my family's very similar, so they're more like, when they get a belief, they kind of hold on to it, and I was kind of raised like that for a long time, so it took me a while for me to, like, actually, like, be able to, like, see everything, like, okay, try to understand something more and be able to actually change views.
Do you feel like that shift in your perspective, like, talk about that shift in your perspective now and how that's benefited you, and like, do you think that that's just beneficial to you, or is that something that, like, should we all be doing that in your perspective?
For me, I feel as though like we could all just get along better if we could like see where each other's coming from. Even if we don't agree, we could at least be like, okay, well, it's not that bad. This is the reason why that person's doing it. They have reasons. It benefits me because I believe it allows me to be a little bit more social people, and allows me to help people more. Because even if they come with me a problem where I believe they're in the wrong, I could still give them, like, opinions on how they can improve it, rather than just saying like, well, what you did was wrong in the first place. You should be able to get yourself out.
Sure, because that's the easiest thing to say, right? And we don't really know, what people are struggling with, or even more than that, like, what it's doing to them. Like, your dad could be gone, and my dad could be gone, and I could go, oh, well, both of our dads are gone, so you know what I'm feeling. But the way that affects me and the way that affects you could be totally different. Do you feel like hearing other students' stories and, like, getting to know other students and building friendships with other students has helped you in having that healthy perspective of people?
Yeah, I believe it has.
Like, in what way? Like, what's been one of the biggest assets of you, like, learning about where other people are coming from?
Specifically, like, specifically more like gangs, because I never agreed with them, and to be fair, I still don't. I'm very against it, but I, like, never really understood why someone would, do something like that until more recently. And I started actually knowing people who are in gang stuff, and it's like, most of them didn't join because, oh, hey, I want to get a tattoo of a number on my arm and kill people. They were more doing it like, their family was in it, or, friends were. It's the only place they had to go.
Right. I mean, you can equate that to, like, people's religious stances, or, if you're born into a Catholic family, and a lot of times people continue on with Catholicism, and the main reason why you're doing that may just be because that's what you've been exposed to all your life, and that's what you're familiar with. So if you're born into a gang lifestyle and family, then it could very well, I mean, if we were born into that, you and I could be gang members, like, that could very much be the reality.
Yeah, or like drug addicts, a lot of kids have like drug addict parents, even though they're always saying like, oh, I don't want to be like them, I'm going to change, a lot of them normally end up in the exact same place.
So let me close this out by asking you a question. So do you see, like, how much have you changed in the last couple of years? Like, do you feel like you've changed a lot? Do you feel like it's like you changed a little bit? Like, what's your opinion?
I feel as though I haven't really changed much when it comes to, like, interests and stuff. But I feel as though I changed more, like, my approach. I feel as though, like, you know, I changed more on how I interact with people, how I'm open with, what I'm willing to talk about, and whatnot.
Are you done? Or do you feel like there's still more changing that you'd like to see in, like, areas that you'd like to grow in?
I feel as though there'd probably be a little bit more areas I'd like to just, you know, improve in. I feel like there's always room, there's always ways I can improve, even if I can't see it.
Do you know one of those areas just off the top of your head that you, like, really want to improve in?
Off the top of my
Why is that funny?
No, I'm trying to think, because I can think of things that I want to change, but nothing, like, personality-wise. Probably, I'd say probably just to be more understanding. I want to make sure I get to a point in my life to where I could just at least get a basic understanding of everything, and I could see from everyone's point of reason. Because there's still a few things that I'm very iffy about, and it's like, I can't really see why you do this or that.
Well, and I honestly, I think that as long as you have the desire to understand, because simplistically, a lot of times the only way we gain understanding is by asking questions, you know, by listening to people's answers and trying to see where they're coming from. So if you have the desire for understanding, like, that's something that's really going to aid you, because hopefully that equates to you asking questions when you can't make sense of something, and at least see where someone's coming from. You don't have to agree with their decision making or even think it's healthy, but at least you can see why they do what they do. We don't necessarily agree with people being involved in gangs, but I think we both have a deeper understanding as to why they do what they do, and you know, and I think that people appreciate being understood. And it may, again, that may not equate to change, but when people feel like someone understands them, there's a connection that's built there that they, you know, it's hard to find with other people, you know. So people are really going to appreciate you and value your friendship with them if you can continue to grow in understanding, because I think that essentially people want to be themselves. And if you create an environment or an arena for people to be themselves at, they're going to be very drawn to you, because where else can they go to do that, you know?
Yeah.
So, okay.
Okay.
Well, I think that you're fully healed now, and you should have no other problems in life going forward. That's how amazing this session was.
Yep, let's hope that's the truth. If I go outside and I fall and I, like, break my leg or something,
It's going to be my fault.
Exactly.
Right, great. That's awesome. Okay.